based on statistics. Half of all Europeans are not able to pass a basic financial test. Out of those, only 1 in 5 individuals understood the relationship between bond prices and interest rates. That's a basic. Guess what Malta's favorite financial instrument is? The bond. So,
what are we saving money for? Just to die a millionaire and not having made the most of it, or to live our rich life?
Welcome to another episode of the Grow Up podcast. We're in April, so April is known as the month for National Garlic Month, the National Month for Poetry, but more importantly, the month for financial literacy. And what a better way to build a financial literacy episode than to have the two heavyweights of financial literacy in Malta, at least on social media, Patrick and Luca. Patrick, I'll introduce you first. So you're a full-time financial planner. You've got about 20 years of experience in the finance world. You founded Finance for You. You are a CFA charter holder and a certified public accountant with master degrees in finance and accounting. You currently provide financial well-being programs to businesses, and you hold also individual financial planning sessions. And you're also a lecturer at the University of Malta, MCAS, and various business schools. So, a bit of an underachiever, but welcome. Welcome to the podcast. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you.
I think it's your first time as well, so.
Correct, and I'm weighing at 70 kilograms.
That's very good. That's not bad.
Thank you
70 kilos is good for our age, we keep clean. So
quite
it's very good.
good.
And we have a returner as well, who was in episode 6, if I'm not mistaken, of the Grow Up podcast. But with Luca Caruana, he's the founder of Money Coaching Hub. He advocates for financial well-being in Malta and Europe, so he also spans internationally. He's got over 15 years in finance. He holds a master's in finance and investment and is a certified money coach. Apart from personal coaching, you enhance financial literacy through public speaking, workshops. You collaborate with firms as well for employee well-being, and you contribute to Maltese media as well. So we've seen you on Malta CEOs, we've seen you on national TV as well, and you emphasize the importance of financial education. So Luca, thank you for coming back. Welcome
Thank
back.
you for inviting me.
Amazing. So it's good to have you both here. Yeah. And today we've planned a really good episode to kind of discuss a lot of the questions that people have that they don't tend to bring to the surface as comfortably as maybe they would bring about their health or about anything else that they have going on in their personal life. So I'll start with one question, with the first question. I don't know who wants to answer first, but we'll just send it out there. So what are the main challenges you see or you face with your clients currently? So I think that's kind of the first open question I will ask. So whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Daniel's looking at me, so
but only because it's more comfortable.
More convenient.
I don't prefer either of you.
Fair enough. Okay, so thanks for the kind introduction, by the way, firstly. And I find various challenges with clients and even followers individually, but the main two, I think, are these. So first, there's a big challenge in that we did not have a basic financial education. We did not have a compulsory financial education. And that means that people are managing their finances as if they're blindfolded, right? They don't have a plan, they don't have a roadmap, and it's literally winging it with your finances because you don't have the background, rightly so, right? The second challenge that I find is that people never sort of had someone objectively look or pour over their finances to help them manage their own money situation, right? And I personally believe that everyone needs a financial planner, and having that sort of extra set of pair of eyes helps. And the statistics, the data does justify this. Unfortunately, Malta is below the OECD plus average in terms of financial knowledge. Only 25% of Maltese people, thereabouts, understand what inflation is, what the time value of money is. And so we need to drive home the point that people need to be educated and people need financial planning.
Very interesting. What about you, Luca?
I agree with all the things you said, and I think two other things which are also relevant. Many clients, I found it surprising that when they come, they ask, I have a lot of money, what am I going to do with it? And that's a very common question, which I found, especially this lately. So when I started money coaching, I thought that the main problem will be people not managing to save enough money, which are more than 50% of these clients. However, recently there were clients who have a lot of money, but they don't know what to do with it, and they come to me to avoid making a mistake. And you don't blame them. Why? Because as Patrick said, there's lack of financial literacy. When there's lack of financial literacy, people fear making mistakes because they see their friends making these mistakes and they want to avoid them. And another factor is also the psychological factor. I met with many people who have money, but they get anxiety, for example, or they fear losing it, and they feel vulnerable around their finances. So these two factors, I think, complement what Patrick said as well. And so there's quite a variety of reasons why people come. And I think financial well-being is becoming as important as mental well-being, which has been a crucial factor in these past 10 to 15 years.
And they go hand in hand as well, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely. What does, because obviously we've mentioned Malta because that's kind of where you mainly operate currently. But does culture also have a big influence on how people behave, think, and act around money? So, there are stereotypes of certain countries or ethnicities or nationalities, whatever, on how they behave around money. We know that Maltese people are very usually secretive in that aspect. Like, they don't talk about what their salary is, for example, or they don't talk about, how much money they've managed to save, etc. Unless it's me, because I'm an idiot and I just celebrate it or say I'm not doing well, whatever. But so to piggyback on what you were talking about as well, what does culture have to do in terms of the influence and the impact this has on what you've just talked about?
I mean, 100%. First of all, you're not an idiot.
I act like one sometimes.
You might. That's a good strategy to play dumb sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Always be the dumbest in the room.
Exactly. And in
Simon
fact,
Sinek, right?
Correct. But it's quite common. In my experience, it's quite common. In fact, exactly what Luca is saying, just last week, I believe, a study was published by the Faculty of Social Wellbeing in the University of Malta, citing that financial problems were the number one issue that people were facing, or most people were facing in their lives at the moment. So the biggest problem for the most people. So that already is an elephant in the room. Okay? And that stems from what you are saying, cultural norms, cultural, let's say, taboos. I know Luca likes referring to taboos, which they are exactly taboos. But it also boils down to education. I feel, and education is communicating and talking about money and understanding money, and also understanding that it's okay to talk about money. I mean, for example, let's mention another cliche, right? Or another stereotype. In America, it's now compulsory for over half of Americans to have a personal or pass a personal finance course to go into university.
Although they do need to, like, taxing in America works, it's more personal because they have to, like, everyone has to do their own taxes, right? Yeah. Not like us. We're lucky, but it's kind of it just goes without saying that your taxes are worked out usually by your employer, unless you are self-employed.
When it comes to culture, I tend to agree with Patrick as well. And I found out also, which was quite interesting, when I went to Estonia, and there were several people from several countries. And I used to think that maybe the issues faced by us Maltese are not the same as the issues faced by Belgians, as the issues faced by Spanish people, etc. And my reasoning was that, for example, in Belgium, you have more people investing than in Malta. Why? Because there's that investing culture there. However, during these sessions, I found out that many issues are in fact universal. So the lack of people who save for an emergency fund. So many of them did not even know what an emergency fund was, even though they had a good salary, and they did have savings, but not as an emergency fund, but they invested them all maybe in the crypto market or in the stock market. So for many people, it is normal for them to invest that money, but it's not okay for them to put it aside as liquid funds, which is one of the most important factors I feel in anyone's personal finances. And that was an interesting factor for me, because I said, listen, we used to think as Maltese that the issues we face is just as Maltese, but that's not the case. When it comes to financial literacy, to breaking the taboo around personal finances, it is something universal, something which everyone is facing, not just in Malta, but European-wide, and I dare say worldwide. The difference is that in Europe, when compared to the US or to Australia, New Zealand, we're still a little bit backwards when it comes to financial literacy. In fact, when it comes to money coaching, it started in the US, it spread to the UK, Australia, New Zealand, but when it comes to Europe, I mean, you can count them. I don't think there are more than 10 money coaches around Europe.
For you, it's good at least.
For us, it's good.
For us, it's Ironically, lack of education gives us work, which we are advocating against.
It's true, and you are, but it's definitely needed, I think. And with younger generations, I mean, I think you had said it in one of your sessions, because I was lucky enough to attend, which is like millennials are kind of the richest generation in history, right? But there are still people that are struggling with these enormous salaries, and they're still struggling financially because of lifestyle creep, because of commitments that people kind of overreach. You're like, oh, I'll buy a second property, or I'll extend my property, and then putting themselves in kind of more of a financial difficulty position. So yes, definitely need the need for education to plan ahead. I mean, ever since I've been following the both of you, I've kind of stepped up my game in terms of how I think and how I operate, because I kind of am constantly thinking in the back of my mind kind of what's to come in the next few months. So absolutely on board with what you're doing and with what you're saying in terms of there needs to be more education. What do you think needs to change in the actual? So if we talk about education, right? So let's tackle that beast real quick. What do you think needs to change in terms of how the current curriculums are, and at what level as well? So would you introduce this at a primary level, secondary, or then post secondary?
So I like using analogies personally. So the analogy I use is when I lecture and when I teach. So besides my private clients and my workshops, I also teach master's level courses in finance. And it is so sad to see people who are part of boardrooms, literally, they are board level people, C-level people, who do not have a basic financial knowledge. So they start with a massive handicap, and all throughout their careers and all throughout their lives, they would have to rely on other people when making financial decisions at C-level. So that analogy, that comes from childhood. So in my view, the American system that's coming into play, okay, is the bare minimum. So business and personal finance need to be compulsory in secondary schools. That's the bare minimum, and then from there you will branch out. Maybe you have another take on this, Luca.
I agree with the fact that it even has to start from primary, if possible. And if one thing would have to be tackled quickly is are the students who are in junior college or universities who are immediately facing a life transition. Why? Because these students, they have studied for 3 years, 5 years, depending on the course you're doing. And then they go out of university, they start working, and they are expected to make big decisions which can affect their whole life. So questions like, shall I buy or shall I rent? Or decisions like, shall I buy a new car or shall I buy a second-hand car? And normally they go to their parents for advice, which is not a bad thing. After all, parents can be quite knowledgeable about these things, but there are cases where, due to lack of financial literacy, bad decisions are made which can affect a person not just for the coming 5 to 10 years, but for the rest of his life. And so if something had to be tackled quickly, I would go first to junior college and university students to start educating them, and then gradually start introducing it in primary, secondary. Yes, why not? That way you're tackling the next generation. But for immediate impact, I would focus mostly on junior college and university students.
Very good. And it's so interesting you made that connection. Even so, like if they're like in junior college, or junior college would be like high school, right?
Yeah, almost high school, end of high school in the
high
US. Still 18, right? At the end.
16.
But yes, high school.
These are people that usually either work a very small part-time job or rely completely on the stipends to survive. So you already have very little income coming in, and you're young and you want to go out and all that stuff. So so there already is a financial challenge, and then you go into the world of work after junior college or after university if you're still studying. So with university it's even harder because you're now in your 20s, right? And you're still not earning enough to keep you kind of, and with this the consumerism has increased. It's not like us when we were like, where there wasn't much to do, there wasn't like high-speed internet that you had to have, that you have to pay for these days. We didn't have to pay for back then. So absolutely, like it's good to start from there as well, to start planning ahead and etc. Because then once you start making money, you tend to go from one extreme to the other.
This is super interesting because my view is, again, based on statistics, right? A European-wide study this time. Half of all Europeans are not able to pass a basic financial test. That's a recent statistic. Out of those, only 1 in 5 individuals, only 1 in 5, understood the relationship between bond prices and interest rates. And that's a basic. And guess what Malta's favorite financial instrument is? The bond. So that is quite shocking in itself. And in my view, it goes to show that as a nation, I feel we're very often quite good at saving. But we are poor investors. And that poor investing mindset and decision-making starts at a very young age. And with compounding clearly proving that you can make significantly more amounts of money the earlier you start. What a waste we are facing.
We just rang the bell. So we have this segment that we've created specifically for this episode, which is called the What If, right? So throughout this episode, sometimes we'll be talking about topics, and with any topic that comes up, Joanne will be handing me one of these flashcards with the topic, and it will have a question, right? And then one of you has to answer the question, right? It doesn't matter who, or you can both answer the question to see kind of the different views. So, question number 1, I'm going to try and read it. What if the market crashes right after you invest a significant amount of your savings? Common question, or is this the...
Common.
All right, so what if the market crashes? So what if you start investing early on and the market crashes?
Shall I?
Yeah.
So let me take you back to March 2020. The last crash, right? If you invested, let's say, 6 March 2020 in a plain vanilla fund, okay, normal index fund, and you kept that to today, you would be up, I'm being very conservative, you'd be up at least 50%, at the very least.
At least.
And that was that was right before the market crash. The market crashed, and then slowly, it gradually increased. So my view is always, this is not financial advice, time in the market beats timing the market, always.
Yeah.
It's a good way of putting it. What is your take, Luca?
That's the secret of consistency as well. So even, again, not financial advice, but...
We'll have a little banner going on throughout the episode, don't worry.
But I find that the most practical strategy is to invest per month, what we call dollar cost averaging. So no matter what the market does, after all, the amount we're investing per month is not the emergency fund. So if the market goes down by 60%, by 70%, it doesn't matter. Why? Because that's not the main fund. If something happens to our health, we go for it and these things, And that's why I would dare say, if the market crashes, if you are maybe more of an adventurer, buy some more. For example, when COVID hit and the market crashed, I used to invest at the time in ETFs. There was a Belgian bank who used to offer them. And it used to tell you, listen, if it went down by 10% each time, it told you. And it went down, I remember, by 40%. And I decided to put in some more because I knew that it couldn't go on. And I didn't know because I was a genie or something, but because historically, in the past 90 years, the S&P 500 always returned between 8 to 10% on average per year. And what better statistic can you have than 80 to 90 years, which meant there was the Cold War, the Twin Towers, the credit crunch of 2008, and all the things that happened, but still, the American stock market, at least, it went up between 8 to 10%, compounded 8 to 10% a year.
Okay. Good answer, guys. Test number 1 pass. You've got about 40 questions to go through the episode, so, buckle up, boys. It's going to be a wild ride.
Bring it on.
You mentioned emergency fund a lot, but I've not heard anything from you about the emergency fund. So, because I know you're a firm believer in it, and it makes a lot of sense, right? To have
almost a fanatic.
You are, but you mention it a lot because, obviously, when you were on episode, when you were here on the previous episode, rather, you shared that you went through personal experience where an emergency fund would really have helped when you were obviously younger. What's your take on the emergency fund, Patrick? I would really like to know what kind of you think about it.
Yeah, 100%. The emergency fund is a buffer between you and life. So, in case you ever have a costly catastrophe, let's say, simple example, your washing machine breaks down, your dishwasher breaks down, you have, God forbid, a medical emergency. Yes. That is a cushion that you can tap into immediately. It's liquid funds that you can access to be able to cater for that need. And it is, I feel, the first step into financial planning. It is my interest to ensure that people, in the first instance, have this emergency fund before anything else.
Okay, very good. I mean, obviously, it's not a very controversial thing. It's good to have money on the side.
Agree to agree.
Yeah,
let's say Dan is making 2,000 a month. Right? How much of an emergency fund should he have saved up, and where?
Okay.
Any normal account, any other account?
Yeah. Good question. So, personal finance is personal to everyone. That's why it's called that way. So that is my disclaimer. So assuming a very plain vanilla case, okay, 2K per month, you have a partner, you're, let's say, cohabiting, the most classic example possible. So I would keep at least 3, and I'm using quite a wide range, 3 to 18 months, okay, your basic essential expenses, okay, monthly. And that will be your emergency fund. Some people prefer to take a bit more risk and go more towards the 3. Others would rather sleep at night and go towards the 18 or the 12. Okay, but it depends how comfortable you are on doing
so
that.
It depends on kind of how you want to live as well at the end of the day. Yeah. So
exactly.
We'll have another one for
round 2.
Okay. Question number 2. Okay, so let's talk about emergency funds, right? What if an emergency actually happens and then it wipes out your savings faster than you anticipated? Yeah. It's a medical emergency, so bills are expensive with private healthcare.
I would say, you immediately start building another one once you are able to. So, The fact that you use the emergency fund is not the end of the world. I mean, it has the name with it, an emergency fund. You find sometimes people who have an emergency fund, they actually have an emergency but are afraid of using it and they don't want to use it. This was an interesting case with some clients that I experienced. So they literally have necessities. They have the emergency fund sitting there, but they won't touch it. Why? Because they're afraid of touching it. Why they are afraid? Because in the past they had experiences which were not worse than the ones they are experiencing currently, but that life experience led them to a belief that there is an emergency fund, I won't touch it. An emergency fund is there to be used if there is an emergency. So that doesn't matter. As long as the first fund you start building once the emergency is over is that emergency fund. So that is my take on the subject.
Yeah. Happy with that?
Yeah, super happy. You keep rebuilding and replenishing. Sometimes an emergency fund isn't even complete, so you build it as you go along, right? And then the key is to instill the discipline to keep replenishing it or to try and build it bit by bit, because you're not going to, or the average case is not going to be that, okay, in month 1, you're going to put 6 months of your expenses into this emergency fund. You will build it slowly. And when that emergency happens, then you build it again.
Yeah. And if I might add as well, I think it's the most underestimated fund that there is, because many people think it's lost money. Why? Because it's somewhere liquid, which will not give me lots of interest. Okay? And I find that this is the main reason of the emergency fund. It doesn't have to give you 10% a year, 8% a year. Okay, nowadays you have some places where you can get a basic percentage rate between 2 to 3%, maybe, and it's still flexible fund where you can get out the money quickly. But this is not lost money. It's a safety net for you, as Patrick said earlier, to live a better life, to sleep better at night.
Shall we get in some questions from followers and fans and clients, etc.? So we've asked you both to kind of reach out to your follower base for some questions, and you have definitely delivered. I don't know if we'll go through all of them, but we will try our best to do so. So the first question is very, very interesting, actually. So should I have a joint or a separate account? What are the benefits and disadvantages of both?
Yeah, so this is quite subjective. So some people are big believers in individual accounts. You find others who are 100% for joint account. From personal experience, I found that joint accounts work much better than individual accounts. What am I saying? Not totally 100% joint. So each individual in a relationship does need to have his own account. However, for things like loans, groceries, everyday expenses, and especially if there is quite a salary discrepancy, a joint fund, I found out, works much better for the relationship if it's the main account. Okay? Because
where the salaries go in as well? Or?
Yes, yes. So both persons need their individual accounts for various reasons. However, I will still put the joint account as the main base, because what can happen, especially if there is a salary discrepancy, if a person is earning, if the husband is earning 3K a month and his wife is earning 5K a month, so there's a 2K discrepancy, it may be harder to divide the money correctly if they have individual accounts. A joint account might lead to a better relationship than having individual accounts. And this is not just about being practical, but about the best interests of a relationship. Because at the end of the day, the question we have to ask in any relationship, am I here to make more money, or am I here for the best of the relationship? So that's my personal take on it. Of course, as I said, for some people, they might say, listen, I am accustomed to having what I earn in my individual account. I don't want a lot in the joint account because I'm more comfortable like that. And they're at peace with that. But talking from experience and from the clients that I've met with, I'm a big believer in having most of the money in the joint account.
Okay.
Interesting. And there's no one size fits all, right? There's no one size fits all. But once you're living with someone, or once you have a life partner, that life partner is probably the biggest financial decision you will make in your life. So might as well have it with full transparency, full honesty, and full candor. And having at least a portion of joint funds would serve that purpose.
So there's also the option of having a joint account, but like just as a bill account, right?
Yeah.
I'll share my personal, like we found that really works, and we've only done it for the last 2-3 years.
Okay.
So before that, we weren't doing that, and we were losing track of finances in general. But now we have that, we know exactly how much we worked out. We sat down, we saw how much kind of we earned, and then we said we derived percentages of what we give and all that. So it's really helped out. Like again, it's not financial advice. I'm in no position to give financial advice to anyone, but the joint account really helped, at least kind of the month-to-month household operations, kind of just manage it. And again, it's just at the back of your head, you know that all the bills are going to get paid, shopping's going to get done, home loans going to get paid, any other commitments are going to come out from that account as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it makes financial planning much easier if you are a couple, I believe.
Yeah.
Because with individual accounts, there are more individual goals, I believe, than joint financial planning.
I'm going to skip the investment question because I think we've covered it quite a bit. Or shall I do it? Shall we go for it?
Which one? You had so many questions. You had like 50 million.
The question is, should I go for a pension, invest myself, or is there any other way?
Okay, you've punished us now.
Yeah.
All right.
You've opened Pandora's box.
I have indeed. Okay. Disclaimer. Text underneath, no financial advice.
Yes. Do not listen to anything we are saying. No, I'm joking. But yeah. So anything that is being discussed cannot be construed as investment or financial advice.
I'm a big advocate of diversification in asset classes, in financial instruments, in geographies if possible. So I wouldn't exclusively invest in a pension plan as my only source of saving grace, let's call it that. One, because a pension plan is a very long-term, very illiquid, very particular investment, which you are locking yourself into for decades, at least. And so I would do a bit of both. I would put in some funds, if possible, okay, in a pension plan, and also others in another diversified portfolio of let's say, investments. But don't just diversify for the sake of diversification, because if you don't know what you're doing, then there's actually a thing called diversification, which if you don't understand in a particular financial instrument, then you're actually going to be worse off by diversification for diversifying's sake. Shall I stop there? I think that's
good. Well, let's hear Luca's thoughts on this.
Yes. So with regards to diversification, I agree 100% with Patrick. I have both a pension plan and I also invest in ETFs. If you had to ask me personal preference, I would for sure, without giving obviously investment advice, go for the ETFs, simply because of the fees which relate to ETFs compared to pension plans. And when I mention fees, not many people are aware of the kind of fees which pension plans have related with them. So there are both benefits and disadvantages, but I still have the pension plan mostly because I think there's an element of discipline when it comes to pension plan, because you know that the money you're putting there, you're going to use it in 30 years time, practically 35 years time, whatever. So it keeps you disciplined that the money you're investing, you will for sure use it when you are 65, not beforehand. Okay, depending obviously on the term of your pension plan.
Clauses and all that. Right?
When you're investing in ETFs or in anything else, there is always that risk. Even you can be the most hard-headed person in the world, but there's always that risk that you can dip into those investments before the plan. Okay, so I like to keep psychologically. I like to keep that discipline in my head. Listen, there is that pension plan which you will touch when you are 60, 65, whatever. Then you have those ETFs, which might, yes, be more beneficial than the pension plan, but there's always that chance that you touch them before the age of 60. And I want to safeguard myself against that as well.
Okay, I think this is a bit... it's not just in Malta. I think everywhere home prices are rising. But should I take a home loan as soon as possible? Or should I consider other avenues considering the rise of home or house prices?
Yeah.
Luca, do you want to go first? We'll swap it up a bit.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. It really depends, because this is a very difficult question to answer for the young people searching to buy a home. Why? Because I find that people from between the age of 20, especially the age of 30, they have lots of pressure from their parents or their family to buy a property, even if financially it doesn't make sense for them to buy a property. For example, a client I've had, he had enough money to buy, but it didn't make sense for him to buy a property. Why? Because he liked the nomadic lifestyle. So he liked to work 2 weeks in Malta, then go to Cyprus, work 3 weeks there. Okay, it is possible for him because it's remote working 100%. In his case, the only reason he was going to buy a property was because of the pressure he was facing from his parents. I'm not saying that buying a property is bad. And buying a property is can be seen as a good investment, especially in Malta, where in the past years, Patrick may correct me if I am wrong, I think it's about 7% to 8% per year, considering the investment you make, the appreciation, and if you eventually rent it out, all the
That's pretty big.
Yeah. So it's quite stable. However, for some people it might not be the best choice. The best choice might be to rent. Okay, both in the case of persons who like to live this nomadic lifestyle, which I am finding out, especially in youngsters, it's becoming quite popular. And there are people who can definitely not buy a property because the salary that they have doesn't even cover, they will find it hard to cover the deposit. The questions they have to ask is, if I buy a property, will I afford the loan, not just now, but in the future? And I find that one of the problems that these youngsters are facing, they are taking large loans. So in my time, just 10 years ago, when me and my wife took the home loan, we pay €600 a month. So 300 each if you would like to divide it. Recently, a friend of mine, they bought a penthouse and they have to pay a total of 1,900 per month. And many people tend to forget that it's 1,900 not just for 5 years, 10 years. It's for 40 years for many of them, because they take out the loan when they are in the early 20s and they have to pay by the age of 65.
I remember having this big argument with my mom about this, because my brother was looking for a property and she was like, "Oh, you just need to save and spend less. You know, these kids complain about it." I was like, "You have no idea like what the difference between median house prices and salary." Like if you see, there's a timeline of how the graphs grew from the 60s.
No, you're spending it on avocado and toast, Daniel. That's what you're doing.
Right? That's what the problem is. So it's a very hot topic. Like even for me, in terms of house prices and median salary ranges, where they used to be very, very close to each other in the 60s and the 70s, Like now, the salaries have not been adjusted to keep up with the rising cost of real estate, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So to the listeners who do have maybe children in their 20s who are looking like, my call for action is empathize that it's a really, 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 really difficult to save up. I mean, keeping in mind now, if you want to buy a 2-bedroom, right, or a 1-bedroom, how much does it cost? Like a 1-bedroom, you have at least 170K.
Lower end.
2-bedroom, 250K for sure.
Right. Okay.
If
So
I'm not
imagine
mistaken,
somebody on a 25K salary having to save 25K. It's impossible. It's impossible if they want to live, and you're in your 20s. Like literally, the 20s is probably the best
Prime of your life.
the prime of your life. It is the most fun you can have until you can get too burdened with responsibilities and kids and problems and all that stuff. Receding hairlines, happens. So people need to understand that, like, yes, you can save, but you literally have to lock yourself in the house and do nothing for a whole year and just work, which isn't really, I think, a widely accepted behavior for people to do these days, especially in the modern Western world. So absolutely. Sorry, I kind of hijacked this bit, but what would you say?
Not at all, but I love this question. I get it so often from clients, from followers, all the time. It's a very common question. Personal finance is personal to everyone, but ceteris paribus, assuming other things being equal, okay, the younger you are, the longer the time horizon you have. So the more adventurous or liberal you can be with your, let's say, risk-taking, let's call it that, because you have more time to repay, more time, terms and conditions might be more favorable for you. So assuming other things being equal, I would always suggest the younger you are, the more you will try and save as much as possible for a small unit. Don't buy too much house, just a small unit. Do it up slowly, okay? And start climbing the property ladder one step at a time. So that is one alternative that I sort of propose to happen. Another, let's say, riskier, more adventurous alternative is potentially what is known as house hacking. House hacking is when you buy a slightly bigger unit or a bigger unit, and then you invite someone over to live with you, and that person will live with you and repay part or a large part of your mortgage. So there are various ways to peel a potato, because we cannot say the alternative these days. Okay, there are various ways to do that. But touching upon Luca's point, because I really wanted to emphasize this is a very good point, that people sometimes are deceived. They're deceived at the headline price. That, okay, we're mentioning 250K. But very often people sell you just the headline price, and they fail to tell you what the closing costs are.
Yeah, I mean, notarial fees. You have 7K at least, 7K easily.
That's also where lack of financial literacy comes in.
100%. And so...
Plus then you have to either redo or fill in the property, and banks only give you a certain amount of money to do that. Like, they won't give you the full price as well. So
I did a video on this about a month ago, and I called it "All You Need to Know About Property," and I mentioned these closing costs, and so many people were like, "Hey, I had no idea that these costs even existed." Some people who actually bought property were even unaware that these costs existed. And once you whittle it down, that 7% annualized return, let's call it 7%, once you start including these closing costs, maybe
they might go down a bit.
Exactly.
And they're going up as well, obviously, because there's a big demand for them. Like, I remember when I bought my first property, and then I sold that, and then bought a bigger house after we had our daughter, etc. The notary fees went up like 6-fold, I think, or something. I looked at the invoice and I was like,
thousands of euros. No one prepares you for that.
No, you're not prepared. So easily, so now we've got 10% deposit. Some people don't even accept a 10% anymore. Some developers, they ask for 25, right? They're not legally bound to stop at 10. They ask for 25%. And then you've got the notary costs. Then you need to figure out how you're going to fill up the place. And then sometimes there needs doing, filling up. A bathroom easily costs 15 to 20K. A kitchen easily costs 20K plus these days. So those are things that like people don't really prepare for when they're saving up.
In fact, I call it the Maltese dream, that I want to establish this as well, because there is this perception in Malta that the dream is to own property and to buy property, and youngsters are facing so much pressure to save up to buy property. No, I rented property until the age of 34. Okay, there's no scandal in that. I worked in finance for a long period of time, and here I am surviving, and the opportunity cost of that was not so high because I reinvested those proceeds in the stock market. So it is okay to rent.
Chill.
You don't need to, exactly. You don't need to use that formula.
I think it is more the parental pressure sometimes, or maybe the family pressure of like, oh, you haven't bought a place because I bought a place when I was your age. I was like, yes, but my usual answer is, but when at your age it costs 3 chickens and a camel to buy a house, not 16 times your annual salary,
There we go.
We'll have a camel one. Is this buying a house? Okay. Very good. So, okay, very, very interesting. So this is a bit personal. And it could be answered like, what if you went through this experience? So what if you find your dream home? Sorry, what if you find your dream home, but it's significantly over your budget? Okay.
Luca, over to you.
So, I have a saying which I've learned from persons like Steve Jobs and who died prematurely, one has to say. And when they asked him about his what he would have done if he had the opportunity, he had regrets because of the lack of time he spent with his children and the lack of time which he spent. He did part of his dream, but he regretted other things. So, if there is this dream house and I don't have the funds for it, I would try to make it possible to find the funds, especially if it's something which I have dreamed about all my life. Because I believe that dying with regrets is the worst that you can have. And you might say it's easier said than done. And I go back to last year, for example, just to make a parallel example. It was a very hard year for me because my wife didn't work and we lacked one of the main incomes of the family. And although I had a good emergency fund, it was still not enough to cover the costs of the whole year. And I find that when a person feels trapped, but is willing and is confident in his ability to find a way around it, I believe that the person will find a way around it if he trusts himself 100%. So this has a lot to do with going beyond your comfort zone. And in this case, this is an actual example of going beyond your comfort zone and finding a way to buy that dream home if it is really something which you have targeted all your life. Because after all, what are we saving money for? Just to die a millionaire and not having made the most of it, or to live, as our friend Ramit Sethi likes to say, our rich life.
Very
that is my
interesting.
take on it.
Well, I have a very similar experience to share, but I would like to hear your thoughts first, Patrick.
Well, I would say wake up from that dream. Well, if it is within the realms of reality, then and you trust yourself, then I have nothing to add to Luca's assessment. Perhaps banks would then bring you back down to earth. If that's
I mean, yes. If you're like 21 and you've seen this 50 million euro mansion on the cliffs of Melliha, with 16 pools and 2 Lamborghinis already parked,
chances are.
Wake up. But I'll share my experience when we went to see when we started looking at houses after I decided like I'm just going to sell my flat and we'll just buy a bigger house together, me and my partner. And we saw this house which we live in now, so spoilers. But and it was a bit slightly over our budget, right? But we reached out to our family circle and said, listen, we just need some help with the deposit until the other property is sold, right? So, okay, it was a bit of an easy yes, because it was literally just a span of a month. So it's almost like a bridging loan from family and friends to help us give the deposit so we can start the proceedings of the buying of the property. But yes, if we didn't take that risk, as Luca promptly pointed out, we would have never bought that house and would have gone settled for something which was more in our budget. And this house was over budget by like 70K initially. But it's the deposit that holds you back ultimately, because then once you obviously if the bank clears it for a loan, then you're good to go. But now looking back, we're glad we did that because we have a very, very big home and a home that we can kind of it's a forever home in that sense, right? So we're never gonna want to have a bigger house unless we have like 16 kids, which is not gonna happen.
You never know.
No. So no way. I would get a vasectomy way before that. Way before that threshold is
Okay, this is recorded,
but
guys.
Yes. No, don't worry. No, there is no surprise there for sure. Okay. Very, very interesting responses, and I think this is a very hot topic right now. Across the world in general, real estate prices are pretty high everywhere, and salaries have not kept up with the rise. They've gotten better, especially like in Malta. I've seen the difference in salaries, which is great. It's good to see, but they've not nowhere near what house prices are.
Well, if you look at salaries, a report was published, I think, a week ago or a couple of weeks back, stating that in real terms, from 2018 to today, so it's a good 6 years, in real terms, salaries have remained where they were. Yeah. So we are exactly in real terms where we were in 2018.
So when you look at the frustrations of the generations that are working right now, so you've got your Gen X downwards, right? Because baby boomers, most of them are now in the retirement age. And you see people frustrated why salaries haven't gone up rather, but then companies are registering record profits and all that, right? So without becoming too much of a conspiracy conversation, but the numbers don't lie. So if you are a company that's saying, we're in record profits, but we just laid off 400 people because we can't afford their salaries, or we've not increased our salaries, we just increased the COLA, for example, in Malta, and that's it. Like what are your stance on that? What are your thoughts? This is a bit of a spicy one.
Oh yes, and totally. And so today's generation is angry for a reason. There's not just financially, but there is a movement that is known as loud quitting, where people just go on TikTok and announce their resignation, like live to people. And our generation, in our eternal wisdom, is preaching, or boomers or whatever, preaching that how wrong this is, how terrible they're acting, but we're not listening to them. Clearly, they're frustrated for a reason, right? I mean, this is the most liberal generation, the most open generation we've ever seen, actively voicing their frustrations. And when you see property prices rising by an annualized average of 7% every single year after year, and salaries remaining the same in real terms, then I think we should look at ourselves in the mirror slightly and take a bit of the blame.
I think sorry, Luca, did you have anything to add on that?
What I'd like to say is, okay, there is this problem, and sometimes, unfortunately, although it's wrong, life, I find, is not fair. And I think although we are facing, yes, this problem, this issue, we still live in an age of opportunity. And that is why I believe that many youngsters and increasingly also millennials are doing their own side hustle, and they are becoming eventually their own bosses thanks to this side hustle. And it's far easier nowadays to create a side hustle, begin your own business, and earn actual money from your passions. So the way you presented is, yes, it is negative. However, we always have to find ways to create the positive out of the negative. Because if we just rest back and say, this is unfair, we will remain seated where we are. Back in the Industrial Revolution, there was this movement called the Luddite movement. Okay, and they used to break the machines so that the factories don't take their work. And I find this same concept with the recent introduction of AI, for example, which many people are thinking that they're going to take lots of jobs.
I think it's come up on every single episode for the last 7
but
episodes.
new jobs will be created as well.
Yes.
But it is something which people miss out on. So we tend to see only the negative and not the positive.
What I wanted to say, because I agree with both polarizations of the topic, right? Both sides. So yes, life's not fair. Like sometimes you just have to get on with it. Yes. So what we see a lot with this generation, as you said, is very liberal. But then, as with everything, some people take it to an extreme where then everything is bad, and it's nothing's my fault and everything's externalized, rather than actually saying, okay, I could have been less of a dick and actually done my job properly. Maybe that they would have liked me more,
Perhaps.
or kept some opinions to myself. Maybe they would have liked me more at work. So those are things as well that I've seen from both. I've seen it from both doing leadership roles in companies and consulting with clients more recently. But a lot of advice I give my clients when it comes to hiring or retaining employees as well, it will cost you way, way, way less if you up someone's salary by 5K a year than having to hire someone else. Because trust me, the market out there is brutal, and if you want to hire someone of quality, you're going to have to pay more. Right? So for business owners out there that do have employees and maybe are a bit skeptical about increasing salaries because you want to maintain the level of profit or you want to increase the level of profit, understandably, it's your business, it's your baby, that makes sense. You have an emotional attachment, but your employees are also part of your business and you are responsible for them. And they are responsible for putting your business in a pretty picture, right? So sometimes increasing a little bit of salary, which will cost you maybe a fraction of the impact, will retain that employee, will give that employee a newfound breath of life in terms of how they operate.
That's cool.
On the other end, if you're hiring a new employee as well, don't not hire someone because of a salary difference of 2K, because you have a bracket of 20K and this person wants 22. If this person is if you are very excited to get this person on board, go for it. It's better to pay an extra 2K because you know that person is super capable and is going to drive innovation in your business, then do that, right?
Yeah, we need to encourage.
And usually when I put it that way, people are like, yeah, you're right, actually. I might as well.
It also encourages entrepreneurship, right? Wherein nowadays we're seeing the rise of personal brands, people's own brands, and this is Gen Z. They want to put themselves out, and the key is to make your goals congruent to
absolutely
to the Gen Z.
People don't care about brands anymore. They care about the people that work in the particular brand. So if you are giving people good experiences, and then encourage these people to go on social media, then they will give you a good name.
That's right.
So it's a really good way to build it.
Just give me a fright, man. This bell.
Oh, there we go. All right, so back to finance. Sorry, we delved a bit into organizational psychology there, but it's kind of my thing. So you're not the one who's going to flex your profession here. I'm joking.
All yours.
All right, so this one's about job loss, particularly talking about employment. So what if you lose your job and you can't find similar employment for over a year?
This takes me back to my saying about the side hustle thing. I mean, as I said, we live in an age of opportunity. It has never been easier to start a side hustle. Your business built on your passions, okay? And with the rise of internet, with social media so powerful, I mean, it's quite easy to start it. Okay, of course there is a learning curve like with anything else, but it's not like living 20-30 years ago when internet was not a thing, when to do research you had to do it through books. Okay, now it's much easier, and I would say if you face this year, start a side hustle based on your passions. Very important, because to maintain it, to have that drive, it has to be based on your passions, and go for it. It might turn out to be the most important decision you've ever made, because it will turn out to be your full-time job, and you are your own boss.
Who knows? In fact, in my videos and with my clients, I always say, firstly, there's no such thing as job security anymore. So that is now a myth. Okay, what you need,
we've learned that over the past 2 years now. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. What you need is income security, and that income security, in my view, will come from that old adage of diversification, where you actually diversify your sources of income. So hopefully, before you lose a job and all this, proverbial crap hits the fan, right? You would have already thought about it. Failing to plan is planning to fail. You thought about it. You try and tap into a market, which one is your passion, as Luca rightly says, and two, hopefully has low barriers to entry, right? And you start not only depending on your employment as your sole source of income, because once that happens, you are one paycheck away from poverty.
That's true.
And start earlier. Look ahead.
I would dare say, because you both said like find something you're passionate about. I agree, like with the passion, absolutely, because passion drives motivation. But also, it doesn't need to be something you're passionate about. It could be just something you're good at, something you have a skill in, right? I'm not particularly passionate about putting underperformance structures in businesses. I am good at it because I've learned it. That's a skill I've learned throughout the years. I like doing it, but I don't go around celebrating performance management operational structures. But it's something that I know how to do from A to Z, because I've done it so many times over the years, because I've had really, really good mentors that taught me, and I was in a really good structure. I know how lucky I am to have been through that structure that taught me that. So I would also dare say, it doesn't need to be something you're passionate about. It could just be something that you know how to do very well, and then wrap some passion around it. So, for example, I am very passionate about like networking and giving something of value back. So I built that, and then one of the products I offer is performance management structure.
Right? I mean, Dan, Luca, this is not to say in the slightest that it is easy to build a side hustle from the ground. It's bloody hard. Hard. I mean, this is another qualm, the only qualm that I perhaps might have with today's generation. So they all want to be, a lot of them want to have, that proverbial carrot or that apple falling in your mouth. So in my case, it's not easy waking up at 5 a.m. every day, grinding. And that is where compounding comes in, because the compounding effect is you start small efforts every single day. You add 1% every day. And in 5 years, in 10 years, not tomorrow, in 10 years and 20 years, you will build something great. But it takes time, guys.
We have to move out of the instant gratification atmosphere.
Oh, the TikTok generation.
But with the tools there are nowadays, it's easier than it was in the past, for sure. Because in the past, they literally had nothing, I dare say. So
just go out there, like start speaking to people, figure out what because it's also it could also happen, and I don't want to go too much into it because we did it in the last episode we filmed as well. We talked about this, but it could also be that you're not as passionate as you thought you were about that particular topic in the first place, right? So
then you become
your product and your service will evolve over time,
and it's okay.
Talk to people. See if the people like what you're offering. So if it's coaching, figure it out. Like, how are you going to do it? What's the model? But don't plan too much. Just go and speak to people. And people will tell you 100% whether or not. I'm sure that the Money Coaching Hub is very different than what you perceived it to be first when you launched it. I'm sure that the finance for you and and the academy and all that is very different than the original conceptual idea you had.
Always experimenting.
Yes,
Always
yes.
trying
And
new
you
formulas.
need to constantly be experimenting
Yes,
as well.
yes,
And ultimately people will respond to what they want, to what the market wants, right? So I think having that attitude of just go for it, start slow and then ramp it up. Or you could do just like me and just go all out. But
Yeah.
in all fairness, I've ramped it up over the years in terms of thinking about it, and then I just went for it because I had the opportunity to.
That's very
Right.
perfect.
So I have been ramping it up since 2017. This whole consulting thing, like in my head, how's it going to work? Like, what am I going to say? Who am I going to speak to? What's my, So, but I had nothing on paper, but it was all here, like the podcast. I've been thinking about it for like 3 years.
That's
Like, I
the
don't
power
use-
of execution as well. Because many people dream, they believe, but then they don't execute. And if
That's
there
what-
were more people who actually execute, there will be much more businesses around.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs value execution way more than they do knowledge. That they, stop
get
reading
it done.
books, just get out there and start speaking to people. Why? Because most people, that's what they did. Like, you look at Gary Vaynerchuk, you look at Alex Hormozy, right? And his
That's
wife
what he
Layla.
did.
You look at Simon Sinek, same people. Like, these are not very highly educated people. They are. I mean, Hormozy has a PhD in science or something. Like, he was a data scientist.
Okay.
He hated it. But these are not like highly educated people in the
Academic
landscape
sense.
they work in. But because they just did and they failed,
Just did.
God knows how many times, they learned through experience. So absolutely, execution will probably make or break your response to you building your own business.
Whoa, we're
Another one.
another one.
On fire.
Starting.
Okay, starting a business. I think we'll do this, and then we've got another game which I want to do because we're already an hour and 15. How long are we?
Jeez, time
1 hour
flies.
in. We haven't even 25%.
We need another episode.
We can do another episode. No
Sequel,
problem.
yes.
That's fine. Okay, what if you discovered an expensive hobby that you are deeply passionate about? So an expensive hobby that you're very deeply passionate about. So talking about passion and starting your businesses, but what if you found a hobby that's very expensive, like diving or Warhammer? Or cars.
Or cars.
Yeah.
Look, I can also speak about this from personal experience. I have this hobby for years of collecting very expensive books.
I thought it was the ballroom dancing.
Yeah, ballroom dancing. It was a passion in the past, but now it's dormant. Maybe
In
it
fact, we
wakes
have
up.
a whole choreography
It wakes
planned
up
in about
again.
30 minutes.
That's the other episode.
You can add something about. I'll send you the video. No, it's collecting books. In fact, I'm also a novel writer. It's dormant as well. But since it became expensive to continue collecting these books, I actually decided to take a break from it. And if you ask me, do you miss it? Of course I miss it. But are there more important aspects which you are doing now which can in the coming future help you continue collecting these books? I would say yes. And I employ a lot this strategy of, do you want it? And if you really want it, after a couple of days, just go ahead and buy it. Since this book collection thing is something which I like doing, but it's not something I really wanted. It was not a life-changing aspect. It was okay for me to let it, at aside, to let it go dormant for a bit, and then restart it when I can do it again. So, unlike what I said about the dream home and about these things, I would say, listen, if you are in a situation where the hobby is so expensive that you need to sacrifice other important things to do it, then think more about it and see if it is possible. You might have other hobbies which are not that expensive as well.
So what would you say about linking what you like
So
to then starting a business as well?
that can be a way that can be tackled differently then, because if you can say book collection, you can venture into selling books, for example, and create a business out of it, which is not something which I considered, to be honest. But there are people who make a distinction here. Some of them say, this is my hobby, don't connect it with business because I want to keep it as a hobby. Then there are people more entrepreneurial say, listen, it's a hobby, I can turn it into a business, and it is my passion. As I was saying earlier, build businesses based on your passions. But yes, there are some people who don't want to link hobbies to businesses because
My partner
it like erodes that hobby feeling.
I'll share my story. So my partner is an awesome baker. She does cakes for people. Like she does these really nice concept cakes and all that. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Zoe's ever shown you, and she does like really good. And I've been telling her for years, like, if you want to start a baking business, like, you do the baking, I do the everything else. Like, I will manage the sales, everything. She was like, I don't, because I would end up hating baking because of the stress involved in reach. Obviously, you have really tight deadlines. Like, you can't say, give me an extension on a confirmation party or a birthday. Like, these things have to be very well timed, and you can't do them too early because otherwise it will spoil.
And you'll be managing her performance as well, so that's
so
annoying.
And then having someone like me behind you saying, hurry up, which is even worse. But because if it was me and I was good at doing that particular thing, I would monetize the shit out of that. I would figure a way out of how to do it all, because I would be doing it something I love professionally for money. Like, that would be a no-brainer for me. But it's very interesting that you said that there depends on some people on how entrepreneurial they are, because that is actually like the case I've experienced with this as well.
With you as well. I mean, you know what, guys? I decided to leave my full-time employment. I still question myself to this day why I did it. Yes, could I be earning much more in full-time employment? Yes, 1,000% times 2, right? But I feel that what I'm doing, at least for now, is much larger than me. My vision to democratize and demystify financial knowledge is something that fulfills me so much that no amount of fixed salary, would give me that fulfillment.
Also, doing what I want is so the fulfillment side, absolutely, like 100%. But just being happy in terms of, if I want to spend time with my kid, like this Easter holidays, because my kid's not been going to school, I've spent so much time with her. We're playing board games, bought her Monopoly, bought another board game, card game and we're constantly, like, every little 15-20 minute stint I have, like, between workloads, I'll go and we'll do a quick game, right? So that's just a very small example. But even the ability to be able to train whenever I want, or the ability to take it easy on some days and then really do deep work on the days like I feel like it. You're in full-time employment, you have to go to work.
Yes.
The days you don't feel like working, you have to still show up and do the work.
But on the other hand, Dan, you said, and me too, myself too, you were conceptualizing this for a number of years. So you were planning it. You didn't just jump into it.
Well, I did jump into it because I just said, I'm just going to see what happens, right? So I started building conversations with people and all that as soon as I left for it.
Okay, right? Same.
So there was that element of risk. I am still, even though now literally I've been just 1 month in operation. So the first 2 months was building like testing, doing market research, figuring out value proposition, getting your website, getting your VAT number, all that joyful stuff, which was really fun. But obviously you have no income for those 2 months. It was fun. It was fun figuring out what I want, right?
Strange definition of fun.
It was a Rubik's Cube for me to solve.
Okay, that's to each their own.
Yes, it's the way my brain works. But now, obviously, getting into the second month of operation and actually seeing the fruits of your labor, like kind of, getting your first contract, getting your first invoice paid, doing a little dance, projecting now, like kind of what the work looks like, and starting to see like, okay, there's a workload going in, but it's on my terms. Like, I don't have to listen to anyone. Like, genuinely, there's nobody who tells me what to do. It's very liberating.
Oh, yes.
And I have opportunities to go into full-time employment as well. So one of the key decision makers is going to be that, right? Do I want to work for someone, or do I go just keep doing what I'm doing? Yes, I can earn more money, but I am essentially selling way more of my time to make a little bit more money than I'm potentially going to be making in a year. So it's a big debate and a decision internally. So yeah, so absolutely, like, you know, I agree with that. Luca, did you have anything you were going to say? Sorry, because I must have interrupted someone.
No. Well, I mean, I agree with both of you. I mean, what you did, although you took the plunge, as Patrick said, you were indirectly planning for it.
Oh, yeah.
From before.
Calculated.
I mean, yes. And sometimes we don't know that we're planning for something until the time comes, and that is when there's the opportunity, which comes for everyone, I think.
Yeah.
And it's simply a matter of, shall I take it or shall I pass it on?
My only regret is not doing it before.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I regret.
How interesting.
Is not doing it before. I should have done it over a year ago.
But life prepared you for this. Your experiences shaped you into who you are today.
Yeah, but I should have done it on a side hustle, which I didn't.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true.
I had the time.
In Malta, we are so conservative, I feel. There is such fear, at least in my clients, fear of not having that stable income, fear of not taking the plan, fear of having a gap in my CV, fear of staying.
Yeah, I think that's generational though, because it depends it depends who your family are. So I have friends whose parents were business owners and so they don't think like that. They don't think for salary. They think about opportunity. They talk, and the way they talk in terms of opportunity. Like, what's the next big thing to get into? So they have the entrepreneurial mindset, which has been taught to them. So a lot of people say that being entrepreneurial is something you're born with. Yes, it is, especially now that I've been reading a lot around ADHD myself. It is a very prominent trait in ADHD people, for example. But you could also learn how to be an entrepreneur. Like, spotting opportunities is not something that you can never learn.
You can unlearn it from school.
Yeah, pretty much. But then, so for example, me coming from a family where both my parents still are very hard workers, but they've never been entrepreneurial, they don't understand what I'm trying to do. They're like, oh, but you're not earning a salary, or, where's the security? I was like, I got laid off from my job. Like, I got made redundant from my job a year ago,
There you have it. There's the security.
So that's where the security is after 14 and a half years. They didn't think twice, but great. I mean, happy days. It was the best thing that ever happened to me in the last year. But, that's what I'm trying to say. I think that there is the generational influence as well. And most people in Malta are laborers.
100%. Component.
Maybe changing now.
Yes. Not just in Malta, I would say, but
probably even
worldwide too.
But like, for example, maybe in America, for example, like if we look at America, it's more widely accepted to be an entrepreneur.
Because they make it easy for you to fail as well.
Because you're not liable for the business failing. No, in America.
And in Malta, if you fail, your reputation suffers quite a lot. But in the US, they make it easy for you to fail, because that is the secret of big businesses as well. Fail fast,
and fail forward,
and rebuild. And that is something which us Maltese are afraid of. Yeah, the fear of failing.
Interesting. I like that. The island curse magnifies the failure.
No, that's 100% the case. So.
And it's true. If there is one criticism, which is an unfair word, that I would lay onto my own. So my mom is the best financial manager I've ever seen in my life. The best, by far.
Even my mom's, yes.
100%. The way she used what we call cash stuffing now, budgeting techniques, to perfection when in financial difficulty, in poverty even, is something to behold. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that myself. But that scarcity mindset was inbuilt in me, listen, take the first job that comes, because there aren't enough jobs. There's so many people for the same job. But in reality, Luca hit the nail on the head. There is opportunity. If you look into it, dream big, dream a bit bigger, try and achieve more, try and push yourself that little bit more. Don't settle.
Yeah.
That's a word that I hate.
It's settling. But the settling is very, like, I have friends that are like, no, I'm happy where I am. I'm alright with earning the salary. I can do this for the rest of my life.
Question.
Oh, Lily's fun zone.
No, not a fun zone. Is it better to reduce costs from like bills or anything like that, or increase income?
Okay.
Why doing that?
Okay, so
good one. Good question.
So there is a limit to. I mean, the theory says that there is a limit to how many costs you can cut, but there's no
limit with income.
Upside, with income. But I believe that the quick wins personally, first come from cost cutting. So if there are unnecessary wants that, you can, so it all starts with a financial plan. But if there are certain things that you can do without, okay, that are exceptionally high in your, let's say in your budget, okay, then I would start cutting those. Okay? And then there obviously is a limit to how much you can cut over there. In the meantime, I would start looking into other avenues to build my income base through side hustles. But they're not mutually exclusive in my view. I think one might come before another before you see results, but they're interdependent. You can do them at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I would tend to favor increasing your income as long as the costs don't
Stay the
rise
same.
up
Yeah.
with it, because that is the
Lifestyle
biggest trap of all, the famous lifestyle creep. But I think that there are more ways to increase your income than we can ever imagine. I mean, before I started the Money Coaching Hub, I used to think about this a lot. How can I increase my income, which is not related, obviously, to the full-time the full-time salary? And it was a challenge, yes, but as I mentioned before, that is where the power of execution comes along. And when you start taking risks which you never dreamed of taking before, you find out that sometimes the extra income which you plan to make can be much more once you take that risk, because life presents opportunities more to the calculated risk takers than to the persons who stay back and just think only about cutting costs. Because what cutting costs may lead you to, it can lead to what you mentioned before, the scarcity mindset. So it's okay to cut costs, yes. But if I had to think about choosing one thing and focusing on it, I would go for the increasing your income.
Fortune
first.
favors the bold,
Indeed.
as they say. One thing, so I was lucky enough to be invited to one of Luca's sessions. I did two things after I left the session. So the first thing I did is I got home and I canceled my Disney Plus subscription. I was like, I'm not using this, it's gone. And I canceled other subscriptions as well. I was like, right, let me just go through these things. Because you don't even realize how much money you're paying every month with all these different streaming. And the second one, which he also mentioned earlier on, was not buying something straight away. And then if I still want it in a couple of days, I buy it. And I think I probably saved about 500 euros in the last 2 weeks on video games I wanted to buy. Joanne knows me. I'm like, what are you playing now? I'm like, I'm just playing something new. And I'll play it for like 5 minutes and then never play the video game again. I have like 260 Steam games, half of which I've never even installed. So when you talk about expensive passions, I got one of them as well. So absolutely, like cutting costs works. Obviously, the way increasing the income helps as well. Why not do both, right? Like that's what you want to aim to achieve. So good points. Shall we get to the game now? I have the bell ready here. So this bell is actually a family heirloom, I think. So be careful. Don't break it. It's bronze. I don't think you can break bronze. But, there you go. Okay. So it's a fully bronze bell. I remember that's been at my aunt's house, and it was at her dad's house, so it's quite old.
Very old. Should we expect a set of altar boys to come in with the incense one?
I don't know, maybe like some old demon.
Oh my god, okay, exorcise them.
Okay, so we're going to play this or that. So you're going to be presented with two questions, or two short questions. So for example, I'll give an example with this one because we already talked about it.
Okay.
Invest in real estate or the stock market. First person to ring the bell gets to answer it. Second person gets to supplement slightly. We'll do a little bit of a score. Then we'll figure it out in post. We'll do the well, that's the buzzer.
Yeah.
There you go. So you have to pick up the bell and ring. Okay, ready?
Go for it, yeah.
All right, let's go. We'll do as many as we can because we are an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. On topic. Okay. Invest in your own education or start your own business. Hey, go on.
Start your own business.
All right. So why not education?
So I used to think especially in my young age, inspired by my parents, yes, that education was the most important factor of all, and to achieve high marks will put you on a pedestal kind of thing. Then when I started working, I found out that people who got less marks, less certifications, but they had maybe even more experience in work, they advanced much more than the persons who had the certifications, etc. So, and starting a small business is actually the meaning of being your own boss, and you can actually employ highly qualified people to work for you eventually. And even when it comes to earning money, there is no better investment, I believe, that one can make than to invest in his small business, which is by far the best investment one can make, even more than the stock market, more than property, more than anything else. Because if that business grows multiple fold, it can be a game changer for you.
Very interesting. You heard it here first, guys. From Luca Caruana. Follow your dream or work for someone who did.
Exactly, nice one.
No, but that's an interesting take. I think just kind of piggyback on that as well. It's I've met people who are highly educated as well, and I feel that people who have spent a lot of time and again, nothing against education. I'm a big advocate of educating yourself as much as possible. Be curious and all that stuff. But I find a lot of people that spent a lot of time chasing degrees or certifications tend to get unraveled too much in the theory and forget the human element of it. And it happens a lot in this country, particularly, and it really pisses me off, where we see a lot of rigidity in processes in Malta. So a lot of people lacking a lot of empathy, because empathy is a taught skill through actually working with other people and not through putting your head in a book, right? You can't learn empathy. Right? You need to pick it up through conversations, diversifying the people you speak to. Like I was lucky enough to work in an international company, so I met people with different cultures, all across the world. And you start to learn that you are not special. Your country is not special. Like we feel to think in this country that we are above everyone else, unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is why we are so rigid in processes, because no, that's what the process says. There's no way the person who wrote this process is wrong, or that the process is outdated, or that this process does not really fit with everyone's different situations and scenarios. I mean, go to a government office and you know what I'm talking about.
100%.
Not cheating, but it's everywhere, not just in Malta. So absolutely, yes. I think invest in your education to a certain extent. Remain curious and chase the education that you want to do.
That's right.
Like people like you have master's degrees in finance-related topics. It's because you love it and you kept chasing that carrot, kind of. But don't just get a certification for the sake of it and then lose out on potentially experiences.
I see it as a bit of a bell curve. We have this bell, right? I would say invest in your education, then invest in your business, and then keep investing in your education. Oops.
And it's perfect timing.
Perfect
I
time.
agree with you.
So if what Patrick says rings a bell, leave a comment. What are your thoughts?
Nice one, excellent.
Thank you. Okay, next one. Ooh, okay, this is interesting. We talked about this topic, but not in this particular concept. Okay, so do you go for a side hustle for extra income, or do you focus on career advancement?
Good one. Shall I?
Take the point, go on.
Yeah.
As a self-confessed person who was always focused on career advancement, always traditionally, because I've been taught, bred, born into that mold, I've been molded as that person. Having released myself from that matrix and now seen the other side, I would go for the side hustle for extra income rather than the career advancement. And this is with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
I agree. Because it depends, right? Because with career, I mean, it depends, right? I agree and I disagree at the same time. Because if you focus on career advancement and you hit, and you're lucky and you end up in for a C-level position, you're automatically quadrupling your salary there.
Correct.
And
So you don't
career-
need to have a side hustle.
Maybe career advancement can be your ultimate goal as well. You find it in many
No, of
persons
course.
that they don't want to start a business, maybe. So it really depends on what your dream is at the end of the day. If it's becoming a CEO and that's it, so okay, go for career advancement. So this is very subjective as well. But I tend to agree 100% with Patrick that side hustle for me also wins. And I distinctly remember also one of your updates as well. I don't know if it was LinkedIn or somewhere, where you said that if I had a choice in the past where the amount of hours I spent studying, going to lectures, etc., and exchanged it for networking, I don't know if you remember that.
100%.
What a memory.
You'll go for networking. Right? And
1000.
that struck me, and I said, today Patrick is my, how to say, Morgan Housel. Morgan Housel is the author of The Psychology of Money, which I mentioned last time. But sometimes, we tend to follow the renowned persons, the renowned authors, etc. When you have a person like you who can make a status which another person can relate to, and you can make a difference to that person as well. And it is something I learned also since I started the hub as well. Things which I was saying, which I thought they're nothing special, but they were making a positive effect in other people. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Likewise.
Makes sense.
At the end of the day, in this era of, likewise, firstly, in this era of personal branding, I feel that an investment in yourself and your own brand might pay off for your employer and might advance your career at the end of the day. So one does not necessarily ignore the other, for want of a better word, right? You can have both. But what better investment can you make than in yourself, right?
Yeah.
In your own personal brand.
That's it.
I didn't know this until the age of 35, so
Same.
Self-confessed.
Same here. I knew it. I kind of secretly knew it, but it just took a while to manifest itself.
That is nice.
Um,
Choice of words.
But no, and going back to advancing your career, I think there's nothing wrong with working extra hours in the office and all that if you are looking to advance the career, but just do it with intent. I think that would be my advice to maybe somebody who's starting to climb the ladder a bit and they're maybe in a junior or a middle management position. Like, do it with intent, like know where you want to be. And if things don't turn out after a certain amount of time, then maybe it's time to not spend that amount of time in the office, because obviously enough you're not being recognized for the amount of work you're putting out, or maybe you're just not designed to be in a corporate environment or an office environment, right? But no, nothing wrong with working hard, I think, and nothing wrong with spending the extra hours, building the right alliances, you're networking internally, especially if it's a big international company. Nothing wrong with that if you want to do it. So
I might be slightly overlapping myself, but I cannot stress the importance of this. I find a lot of parallels between portfolio management, investment management, and life. Now I'm thinking, what the hell is he saying? I mean that portfolio management, diversification, right? You diversify your assets. In life, you need to diversify your streams of income and your various life sources. So
it's so true. It's so true. Cool. Good answer. Good question, rather.
Good question.
Okay, this is big. This is something that I've experienced recently with one of my clients as well. So, financial planning software or the traditional pen and paper budgeting? It's a competition. Don't allow each other.
Oh shit!
Yeah, you've got points.
Give me that.
So, if I had to make a choice, I believe a lot in technology. Okay, so I tend to lean towards the technological part. In fact, earlier we were discussing the Remarkable, for example, the substitute for pen and paper, which I found very useful, and it allowed me to save lots and lots of time as well. Having said that, I think there are some aspects like the pen and paper for budgeting, etc., which can work for other people as well. For example, in a recent talk I've held with vulnerable women, they believe a lot in the envelope system rather than using a software which for them it's hard. It's hard
Can
to
you
use.
explain what the envelope system is?
So the envelope system is actually having traditional envelopes, and instead of dividing your income into pockets which you find in Revolut or different bank accounts, you actually put them in the envelope. So you write groceries on one envelope and you put the money for groceries. You write bills on another and you put actual cash money in there, which used to work and still works for many people. So I have nothing against that method if it works for you. Okay. So it really depends on the situation. But if it was for me, I would for sure go for the technological part. So if there's technology, why not use it? That's my take on it. Yeah.
Very interesting. Anything else to add on that?
No, nothing to add. Agreed completely.
I think just my take on devil's advocate. I am a big software guy. I'm not going to I'm a big tech guy. Obviously, I would choose that. But in terms of traditional pen and paper, I feel that psychologically there's more intent because you're doing it yourself, right? Sure. It's like kind of you're physically invested, not just relying on the system as well. So I think that there is that element.
That is why technology tries to meet tradition. Especially in the case of, for example, the remarkable tablet. You have a pen, you write on it, and the actual feeling is like writing on paper.
They've done something now similar that you do as a paper that you draw on, and then it automatically starts drawing digitally in your laptop as well. So it creates like a digital asset of what you're doing. Okay. Oh, this is big actually. Ready? Credit cards. Do you use them for points or just avoid them overall because of the potential debt?
Is it very common in Malta?
It's getting
Sometimes.
there. It's very common, like in the UK. I can tell you that.
In the US.
Okay, good say. I'm ringing.
On a roll,
because you answered without ringing, so I'm ringing.
Yeah, you lose a point for that.
True. What the hell?
Look, I know that many people like the points, they like the reward. But if I had to avoid credit card completely, I would. Because I think that psychologically, if you don't have it, you try planning for the expenses you might have or the emergencies you might have from within your own cash base, which is actually your own money, without getting into the risk of using it to supplement yourself. So that is what many people enter into, this trap of using the credit card and then they cannot pay back the debt on it. And it starts from a little amount, but it tends to get bigger. In Malta, we don't have a big problem as there is in the US and other countries. But it is still becoming an issue, especially with the younger generation,
If I could add a bit of my expertise here, not expertise, but my experience with credit cards. Obviously, I was in unsecured lending for a very long time for the UK market. Yes, the reason why we don't have the same in Malta is because we have essentially an offline credit scoring system. There is no credit scoring in Malta, right? Whereas in the UK and the US, if your credit score is good, you get contacted by the bank and say, listen, we're going to up your limit. Are you okay with that? And we used to do it in the UK. We used to call a customer, listen, just so that you know, your limit's been upped. That's it. And customers used to call us back, I don't want the up limit, because most of the people that have good credit score usually are very, very much in line with their finances. But I've also seen people, people in their early 20s struggling with 5-6 grand of credit card debt, and that's very crippling at that age. I think for me personally, I use a credit card. I use it every day, but I pay it off. And I use it for the reasons of that credit card does tend to have quicker resolutions if there's an insurance issue, there's a dispute of payment, and like airline companies and stuff like that, hotels tend to always opt for credit cards. So I use it there as a tool, a very small limit. Like I remember I had been given a limit, I think 10K initially, and I was like, I'll put it down to 1. That's what I want. And I just use it as an intermediary tool. So I think that's to the extent I would say I would use a credit card. I would never say use it as a if you want personal lending, get a personal loan. Like that's the best rate you can get.
In fact, I think it's
Again, not financial advice, but on average, that is the lowest rate of lending you would get, apart from a mortgage.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still the case because I've been out of the lending world for a long time. It's probably 10 years now. But yeah, like that's the only extent I would use.
just one thing. It's a misnomer. If we call the credit card a debt card, then I'm pretty sure less people would.
Yeah.
But I think it's a play with words on purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Marketing. Go.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is a good one. Do you wanna invest in gold or crypto?
I would say. Oh God. Okay, you put me on the spot there. I have to choose. I have to choose. Jeez. Okay.
Oh, the mic fall.
The mic fell. Okay. That bought me a few seconds.
It's on purpose. That's all I'm wondering.
Yes. They say, and not financial advice, that crypto is the digital gold, right? But on the other hand, gold is backed by a tangible asset, whereas crypto is more speculative. On the other hand, based on what is going on, very recently I would choose, again, this is gun firmly pointed at my head, okay? I'm an advocate for diversification, so ideally both, but gun to my head, crypto.
Okay, very interesting. What's your take?
I don't like gold.
More of a silver
I don't like gold. I mean, even Warren Buffett doesn't like gold. Just
Okay.
as
What does
a
Warren
side
Buffett
note.
say about it, out of curiosity?
Gold is that thing which, compared to stocks, because he's a big believer in stocks, when compared with each other, it doesn't go up as much as stocks.
Okay.
So it's like, he didn't call it a dead body, but literally it can drag your portfolio. Many people like gold because they see it as a hedge against inflation. If I had to choose, I would for sure go for cryptocurrency within reason, of course. Why? I believe that in the coming years, the younger generation are more of a risk takers than we can ever be, and they will invest more in cryptocurrency than the older, I would say in inverted commas, boring assets like gold, etc. Even stocks might become boring to these people because of the lack of volatility that it has. So that, in my mind, creates lots of potential to cryptocurrency, to things like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, or whatever you can find in the crypto world. So there's lots of potential. I believe in cryptocurrency, and for sure, much better than gold. But that is obviously not financial advice. That is my personal take on it.
Okay, next one. I think we touched upon it slightly, but we didn't get into it. Buy a new car or invest in a used one?
Beat me to it. I know what you're gonna say.
I'm the car guy.
Oh yeah, 100%, no doubt.
So a used car is obviously much better than buying a new car. Why? Because the moment you take out the new car, it immediately depreciates in value. Now, having said that, disclaimer, of course, if your dream is buying that new car and you can afford it, even though from an investing point of view, from a financial point of view, it doesn't make sense, but if it is really your dream and you can afford it, then go for it. Better to live a life without regrets than regretting every time you see that new car which you can afford to buy, but you're not buying just simply because it doesn't make sense financially. Then, I mean, it really depends on your personal situation as well. So, myself, used car, yes, but if I really wanted a new car and it was my dream of buying that new car, I would go for it. Yeah.
I would say I wouldn't buy a new car with debt, because there you would have a double whammy of having to pay interest on a depreciating asset. And I like to say I've got the coolest car, and that's a paid off car. So
Very good. Well done.
Yeah.
All right. Pay off debt aggressively or invest simultaneously.
yeah,
These are
I
the
mean,
least
I
competitive
got it.
people I know. Can I take a point from you?
We are being polite.
yeah. Oh yeah. There are rules of thumb over here. So with current historical rates of return and current rates on debt in Malta, it would ceteris paribus pay off to invest simultaneously. To invest simultaneously. Okay. Now again, caveat. There are some clients which I have that cannot sleep at night without paying their home loan aggressively. Okay, so if that suits you more, if you can sleep better at night and you pay off your debt aggressively, then so be it. Good for you. Please keep paying off your debt aggressively. But with the current rates of return and expected growth rates that seem to be in existence due to past performance, it might make more sense to invest simultaneously.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this takes us back to the car question. Financially, it makes more sense to buy a used car. But if you really want that new car, then
Go for it.
go for it, you know? And it's the same with paying off it and investing simultaneously. So, yeah.
In reverse.
Cool.
Cool.
Ready for the next one?
Ready for the next.
Okay. Save for the future or spend now?
So they are quite overlapping, you know, because as I was saying, we are saving money not just to retire with 1 million euro or 1.5 million euro. I mean, what's the reason why we are saving money? So that we can live better lives. But do we want to live the better life when we are 60 only? What about now? I mean, I'm 33, soon to be 34. I want also to live in the now. So it's more about balance. Okay. I am an ingrained saver, so I will obviously save because I find sometimes it's a hobby for me to save. It's something I think as financial planners tend to do, you know, save money is ingrained in us. So there has to be a balance for sure. And I have nothing against spending now as well, because if we just keep money when we are 16, when we are 70, we lose all those years where we could have lived a much better life just to live them in our 60s. I mean, what if a health issue comes along? The money will be buried with us, you know.
Unless you're like that couple that they were in their 80s and they cashed in their pensions and they just went on cruises. They just live on cruise ships. If you're in your 80s, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and try and drink something that doesn't cause you heartburn and then eat a bit and then go to sleep for the rest of the day. It's still not a very good way.
Existence.
Okay, last question, I think. Use financial advisor or DIY investment research?
Ceteris paribus. I'm referring to the baseline over here, the baseline Maltese investor, which is not very financially literate, with all respect. So if you don't understand in financial products and investments, seek help. Go to an objective financial planner who can help you. If you are financially savvy, if you understand investments, then do your DIY research. But in my experience, and with all humility, I would say that this is the exception rather than the rule.
Okay, very cool.
Yes, I agree with you. Although I tend to believe that a person with the right drive can actually do the research himself. It will take a little bit long, yes, but it might in the long run be more beneficial for him to do the research and invest by himself. Why I'm saying this? Not just because of the fees, but, and again, I'm not referring to everyone here, but one of the problems we have, and maybe this is a subject for a separate podcast as well, that financial advisors, there's a problem that they are forced, they tend to sell more their products rather than having the best interests of the investor at heart. Okay, and they are forced to do this, I mean, because it's the product of the company and it's where they would earn the most commission. I mean, this is quite well known. So I would be hugely in favor of investment research, even just for that case. Okay, because finding an objective financial advisor, that's I think is the biggest challenge that people have to face nowadays.
100%. There's layers of complexity to this, because Luca's also referring to financial advisors that actually sell their own financial products and charge you a percentage fee, which in some cases could be a very substantial amount of
So they have a bias towards that product, which is totally against what financial advisors should be doing, I guess.
Yeah, and usually they are the ones with the best marketing. Side note. Okay.
Okay. Good things to look out for. Good things to look out for. So I don't know who won. I think by vibe, I think Luca won, right? Are you keeping score? Very good. Luca won. There you go.
That was why I was a little bit relaxed then, because I knew I was 1 up.
That was shaved though. It was a close.
Good one.
Shake hands.
Listen, Luca Caruana, Patrick Debattista, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
It was a really interesting.
It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was really nice. Time flew.
Time always flies when it's stuff like this, and we are not even, we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the questions that we had prepared. So hopefully we can reconvene at some point and do something.
Let's invite ourselves for another podcast.
We have so many. It's recorded now.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our sponsors as always. You can catch Luca and Patrick on the links we're going to provide in the descriptions. You'll catch them all over social media. You'll catch them all over any forms of media that they try and propagate the message through and dedicate. So I would heavily recommend that you reach out, have a chat with them. They're very, very nice people. They don't bite, and I'm sure that they will be able to give you some guidance should you be seeking it. But before we go, maybe one final comment or suggestions from each of you. I'm gonna ask Luca to go first, since Patrick, you opened the podcast. So
yes. So my final thoughts. I'm going now thinking back also on the first podcast that you invited me. If many people are struggling nowadays with their finances, and you might also be a professional who's earning a good salary, or an entrepreneur even who have a good income going in, and it might be difficult for you to speak out because you might feel ashamed because of your situation. Sometimes it's even difficult for you to speak to your loved ones about it. I would say break the taboo. It's okay to talk about money, because once you talk, you will feel better. This is like mental health, okay? When you talk, you will feel better. Now, there's the opportunity to talk to people who can listen to you. And that is also one of the reasons why Patrick and myself have come to this podcast, because in the past there wasn't this opportunity, but now there is. So speak out, talk. We're both ready to listen to you.
Brilliant. Patrick, what's your final thought and message?
Really eloquent. So there is plenty of misinformation out there, and it is unfortunate, because in today's digital age where we have so much information at our fingertips, there is this propagation of misinformation and mishandling of information. So what I would say is that whenever you are listening to someone, okay, check their qualifications, see their track record, and see if they are actually qualified to say what they're saying, okay, especially on social media. And secondly, if you are stuck with your financial planning, speak to someone who is qualified, who can actually help you with that. All right? So don't just go on TikTok and one size fits all, but help is available, professional help.
Very good. Very good message. I think your vocation is impressive. I think that there's definitely a lot of room to help and grow here locally and internationally. So Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.